Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023. We have before us an agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next, please join us in a moment of silence. And Councilmember Moore, can you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, moving on to public comment time. We have no one who is signed up. Is there anyone who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on. No presentations. Next, we have item number 6, which is FY24 School Board Budget Presentation. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting us up here this evening. It is so good to see you all, and welcome back, Mr. Carrera.
Can you put the microphone up closer? Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
So we wanted to take this opportunity to present our school board adopted.
Is it turned on? I'm sorry.
This is what they run into every time they come up here. I get this. Okay, again,
Okay.
nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Welcome back, Mr. Carrera.
Thank you.
We are so pleased to be here tonight to present our adopted budget to you. The budget was introduced on February 6th, presented by the superintendent, and adopted by the school board through unanimous vote on March 13th. And I will let Dr. Saunders get into the details of it. But again, we just appreciate the time for coming up here today and your support of our budget process.
Thank you.
Yes, so I'm going to do a couple of things here. Y'all work a different system than we do, so I'm going to do my best as Rachel was working on it. I'm assuming up here, down in the right-hand corner. I know, but this is not large enough. So I'm going to need a little bit of help here.
If we go here. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's not here.
Oh, because it goes too many.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do my best just looking behind me.
You want to put in the full image?
Yeah, if we can see it here, that would, if I could see something here, that would help.
Oh, I
No?
don't think you are.
Not
gonna
going
be-
to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, here, why don't I click and you can.
no, I'm good. I got it. I got it. I'll make it work. Teachers are good at that. They make things work. So welcome and thank you, Madam Chair, or Madam Mayor and board members. It's a pleasure to be here tonight to present the adopted school board budget, approved school board budget for FY24. It's been a pleasure to work with my board and the other staff members to be able to provide this to you this evening. And I hope to be able to share, this now has come up. I'm not able to do much of anything here. All right, hold on. There, I got it now.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so our strategic plan, as it currently stands, has these, the following goals: to prepare students to be life-ready, to cultivate committed professionals that are invested in the overall excellence of the school division and students served, and to provide effective and efficient support for student safety for student safety. These are our current strategic plan goals, but many of you know that we have been working on our new strategic plan. Some of you are participating in those activities. Thank you, Member Moore and Member Yessi. Those are opportunities for us to continue to collaborate and to work together as a school division. So the superintendent's focus areas for this school year have been excellence in teaching and learning, excellence in compensation, excellence in service and organization, and excellence in strategic planning. I take a minute in the school board or in the budget process to kind of highlight the excellent things that we are doing across the division. We have so many recognitions this year to really celebrate both our students, our staff, and our community. I actually was just at the high school prior to coming here, celebrating our third grade music and movement opportunity. It's the first time I've seen that in person. Apparently they haven't been together in person since the spring of 2019. And the gym was packed, full of parents and full of our wonderful students. And so we have so much to be proud of in Manassas Park. So I share those accomplishments with you tonight so that you know how the funds that we are spending, what they do, and how to connect them to our work. The next slide just kind of outlines the requirements for the superintendent and what it is that I need to prepare and propose. And we have completed those requirements within the timelines and the guidelines as far as Virginia code. So this year we had several budget priorities that I would say that really guided the work that we did throughout the budget process. Those would be student achievement, specifically looking at literacy, academic intervention, and curriculum alignment. We looked at compensation, sustainability and future planning, and while not included in my budget or the board's budget, I do want to recognize the city's investment in safety and security school upgrades. There was a presentation in December, and we are very excited and pleased and proud to partner with the city to provide those security upgrades for all of our students so that our community can remain safe. So while not included in the budget, it's still an important part and a priority for all of us. You've seen this slide before, as we've shared it in past sessions. Our budget process really follows a 5-phase process that starts at the very beginning with our budget holders, our teachers, our schools, our principals, our assistant principals, where we really talk about what are the things that they would like to see in the budget. That moves on to a division level team that starts to look at what is it that comes to the top as far as priorities. That moves to the third level, to the superintendents and the executive team, and then I present to the board, and then it becomes the board's budget. We're tonight in the final phases of that, where we are presenting to the governing body for phase 5 of the budget process. I'll take a minute here to talk about something that you may or may not have heard about in the news over the last couple of months. The Virginia Department of Education provides superintendents and school divisions with a calculation tool to determine the funds that we can assume to get or we can project to get in the school year ahead. On Friday, December 16th, the calculation tools were provided by VDOE in the superintendent's memo. On Wednesday, January 25th, we used those December 16th numbers to really build our proposed budget. We use that to help guide the work that we do. On Wednesday, January 25th, we received an email from our association, Virginia Association of School Superintendents, informing divisions of an error in the calculation of basic aid to school divisions. On Friday, January 27th, we received a superintendent's email from the VDOE detailing the correction to the basic aid estimates. And then on Tuesday, February 1st, our school team we applied that formula and then found the reductions that we needed to make. You heard Ms. Kirkland say, I presented my budget on February 6th, so these changes were made very much at the last minute to create reductions. This budget calculation error occurred both in FY23, the current school year that we are in, as well as in FY24 projected. So for what does that mean for us? As you can see on this slide, for Manassas Park, that means in FY23 about $185,000 less that we anticipate to receive from the state. And then in FY24 about $455,000 less than we were building our budget on back in December. So that did create some challenges for us as we went through the final part of the budget process. This budget also includes quite a bit of change in our compensation plan. I presented to you last year several times about our phased compensation plan and how we were adjusting things to move our salary schedules away from a mid-min-max model to a traditional teacher step and salary scale, and also to convert our support staff and our administrative managerial staff to the same type of process. I'm pleased that within this budget, we have accomplished phase 2, and part of phase 3, we have adjusted our support scale and created a new managerial scale within this budget to make those scales more competitive with our surrounding jurisdictions. That's how we did our teacher scale, which we started with last year, and to allow people to see what their salaries could potentially look like today and then allow them to plan in the future. So that was the purpose around that. This budget does include the adjustments in those 2 phases. So what are some budget highlights within this proposed budget? First, as I stated, a revised classified pay scale and revised managerial scale. They include an 8.2% average increase. STEP plus a 1% scale adjustment for teachers. That would be about a 4.4% increase. Health and medical sciences pathway, we've talked about that before. That is one of our CTE pathways at the high school. And this is concluding or adding into year 2 of that pathway some additional staff. We have repurposed some positions in FY23. These are unfilled positions. They are not positions that currently have staff members in them. So we've repurposed them to some things that we've identified as needs. 2 reading intervention assistants at the middle school, a special education transition services teacher at the high school, student assistance and support specialist at Manassas Park Elementary School, contract adjustment for our pre-K supervisor to an assistant principal at Cougar Elementary School. We've added some professional development allocations at our school levels, which is a new line item for our schools. While minimal, it does, again, allow us to provide to schools that they need opportunities to decide what their teachers need in order to make them successful. We have some contract adjustments to division specialists. Those are content level specialists, people that are working on literacy curriculum, on math curriculum, science, and so forth. And recruitment and relocation bonuses. You know, finding teachers is challenging, and we've included some opportunities for us to do some relocation bonuses to those who might be coming to us from a little bit further away. So in any budget, it's important to kind of identify that not everything that you wanted to have come through the budget made its way in. But these would be included as the superintendent's unfunded budget priorities. These, if things were going to change at the state level, which early on there was some conversation that potentially that could change, but we have not seen any sort of change at this point. These would be the priorities that I would recommend to my board. The first is to add, we originally wanted to have a full 5% increase for the teacher's scale. For teachers across the board, so I would add back in the 1% adjustment on the teacher scale. We have a resource called Evidence-Based Classroom Solutions, which is an EBCS contract. We currently are paying for that out of ESSER funds, and those are coming to an end. You're going to hear that in the conversation as well. But these are resources that are not required, but are something that have been put in place over the last 2 years to help to provide support to staff and students as we've transitioned back from the pandemic, and allowing them some opportunities to think about how we engage with behavior and with those types of challenges that are happening within the school. And the third thing was an additional pre-K classroom teacher and assistant. Passionate about the fact that if we can engage our youngest learners as quickly as possible in our school system, that we can be much more successful as we work through that. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, pre-K is not a required K-12 funded source, and so we receive a different level of funding for our pre-K. And so to add an additional classroom teacher and assistant would be within our own operational budget. And so while it's not required, there were some other priorities that we had to make sure we addressed. So those would be the three superintendent's proposed or unfunded budget priorities. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dave Lyon, the Executive Director of Finance, to take you through the financials in the budget presentation, then I'll come back around to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Would you like my,
I saw it.
can you see there?
Micro screen. Super. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Michelle. Council members, thank you tonight for this opportunity.
Oh, the microphone, sorry.
Thank you. I always forget that. Thank you. Before I leave this slide, and Dr. Saunders did an excellent job of summarizing our process, I want to highlight the efforts from the budget holders, which are the teachers, the department chairs, and then all of the administrators from the school level to central office level for their hard work of identifying needs and then having the difficult discussions and then really the difficult decisions and prioritizing those needs to what went into the budget in the final phase, in their final phases. Because those discussions are not easy. All right. I'm going to see if I can do this. Okay. So this is looking at our enrollment and then projecting outward. Our ADM, our average daily membership, which is what we're funded on by the state, they take that number and then apply per pupil allocations to that for all different revenues. Currently, our ADM is trending downward over the past years, and looking outward, will probably level off. Hopefully, the economic development that we're all investing in here will have a nice positive effect once that starts taking off and people start moving in. But right now, our ADM looks trending downward going forward. Looking at our per pupil expenditures, through from 2017 through 2022, those are final calculations. In the years 2023 and 2024, those are my projected calculations. But what you'll notice in 21, 22, we started to get the pandemic funds. And so our federal per pupil started going up. This year, this coming August, ESSER 2 comes to an end. Those funds are finished. ESSER 3, we still have one more year on. So you'll start to see the per pupil amount per federal start to drop down back to where the range where it used to be. So you'll start seeing some of this total per pupil continue downward. You may also see the local is a little less. One change, and I'll come back to it again, is we're moving all of our capital expenses back into the capital fund. For the past several years, it was commingled into the general operating fund, and at the end of the year, any unspent funds would be put toward capital costs. We're moving towards separating that back out to our capital fund, so that's why you see a little dip there. Our class size for this budget, total FTEs last year we proposed a budget with 511. This current budget we're proposing 504 FTEs, so we see a decline there. But our class size will be 22-1 in K3. Basically 4 through the high school, we're looking at 26-1 on the average. As Dr. Saunders mentioned, part of her compensation plan, we did a market analysis and we looked at our direct competitors, which are Manassas City Public Schools and Prince William. And we took a look at our classified positions and our managerial positions. So when we did that, we noticed we had several that were underwater. They were below market. And in the new proposed scales, we worked to correct that. And that's why you'll see some of those increases. Interestingly enough, our support hourly positions, even though these were underwater, overall, most of them were competitive in the classified positions. It was the converse for our managerial positions, which is normal, because the administrative pay scales are usually the last ones to get touched. So overall, our managerial salaries were under market, overall speaking. So we tried to correct that as well as we could. It's hard with those salaries. Our medical rates came in for next year. Last year, we did not have an increase in our Key Advantage plans, but we did have an increase in our Kaiser, which is HMO. It was the opposite this year. This year, we have Key Advantage with about an 8.2% increase overall on the premiums, and the Kaiser remained flat. So it's just the reverse this year. On the next slide, before I slide there, we're required to pay for 80% of the single employee premium, which you'll see here on the next slide. So at the end of the day, the employee wants to know, well, how much more do I have to pay? So in these tables, we break it down for our single employee plus one dependent, our single employee family policies, and then our dual employee plus one dependent or dual employee family. But you'll see in the single employee policies, we're required to cover 80% of this as an employer. So overall, increase on one of our plans is $27, which is per pay $13.50. Then you can see the remaining variances for the other policies. Down here, you'll see our current participation in the plans, which again, for the single employees, is Key 250 comprehensive and the 500 preventative. But those three policies do contain the most participants. Going back to the scales really quick, we did split out from our current unified scale, which covers everyone, support and administrative. We broke them into two different scales, classified and managerial. Now, the classified, you'll see hourly employees on, and the managerial, you'll see the 12-month administrative employees. To give you some examples of the changes with our new scales, currently in school nutrition, the starting hourly rate is $14.08. On the new scale we're proposing with the classified scales, it's $15.97, which equals about a 13% increase. That's how much under market that position was. Those people, anyone starting out could have made more at a neighboring division. Bus aid, looking at 8% increase, parent liaison, 11% increase on the new scales. How do you take them from the unified scale to the new scale? So on the classified scale, again, these are our hourly employees. I looked at the current salary in FY23, added 3% minimum to everybody on the hourly scale, and then placed them on the nearest step on the classified scale. After doing that, I took a look at how many years of experience they've been given credit for in that position, or a position, or any previous experience that's related directly to that position. And if it benefited them, I moved them up to that step. Managerial scale, the administrative scale, I did not do it. There were no minimum increases on a managerial scale. What I did is I took a look at their FY23 salary, placed them on the new scale at the nearest step, and then took a look at their years of experience, and that's where they landed. There was not a minimum increase on this placement. And so I just, on the next few slides here, I provide you some snapshots of those pay scales. I summarized those procedures for you. Looking at revenue for this budget, 65% comes from the Commonwealth of Virginia, about 27% from the city, 7% from federal, and local is about 0.39%. Local are, some people may ask, well, what are local revenues? Those are rebates, refunds, grants that are not federal that we get in from the Bell Foundation and so forth. We have 5 funds. The general fund accounts for 86% of our expenditures. Our next is our capital fund that we've have revigorated. And then school nutrition at 5%, federal 3%, and medical trust at 0.37. Looking across the functions, about 75% of the expenditures are for classroom-related items. then 8% for administrative attendance and health, and then they break across transportation, technology, and food services, about 5%, and then facilities. Looking at object codes, about 77% of the expenditures are for salaries and benefits. That's our major piece of the puzzle. The rest of them break out with materials and supplies, purchase services, capital outlay, and then other charges. So looking at those funds, our general fund, again, remember, this is 86% of our expenditures. From left to right, you'll see the prior fiscal years. This is the actual 21s, the actual FY 22s, our budget adjusted amounts for FY 23, and then our proposed, our school board approved FY 24 budgeted amounts. And then the variance is between the 23 and the 24 amounts. So you'll see we have some decreases here in contract services, materials and supplies, tuition, and overall, our general fund is $47.9 million, which is about $900,000 more than the previous year. But we do see decreases across some of the areas there. Most of well, all of this really is from the salary increases. This is our federal fund. Again, this is our Title I for school poverty. They qualify for that. Title II, Title III. Title III is ESOL. Title II is professional development. Title 6B, which are special ed funds from the federal government. And this includes ESSER. Now, this only includes ESSER 3 for next year. Well, it does include some of ESSER 2. We may roll into August to finalize some of those expenditures. But altogether, about $2.1 million. You'll see it's a 2.4, almost a 2.5 million decrease from the previous year because of the federal pandemic funds are going away. This is our school nutrition fund. This is a self-supporting fund. And actually, they were told they need to spend down their fund balance. It was getting too high. So you'll see the expenditures are about 2.6 million, which is about $185,000 less than the previous year. However, they're $465,000 over their projected revenue next year. That's intentional. They need to bring down their fund balance. As I mentioned earlier, we're moving back to using our capital improvement fund, our capital fund, our 208. In this fund, we're working with the governing body to fund these projects, the CIP plan, separately from the general fund. So we're requesting $1.6 million from the city in revenue for these projects and the capital improvement plan. We have I'm projecting $1.5 million from the state left over from the grant we received this year of $1.9 million. So a total of $3.1 million in revenue, a total of $3.1 million in projects. So medical trust fund. This is the fund that we have for our retirees. We do pay their difference between the premium and what they're reimbursed for from the state. This fund here is about $205,000. We do project a little shortfall of $17,000. I'll probably cover that with my end of year funds, but for now, I'm just showing it coming out of the fund balance. So all 5 funds wrapped together, we're looking at about 55.5 in revenue million and about $56 million in expenditures. It's $1 million less overall than what we requested last year. Looking at a 5-year forecast, some assumptions on this forecast is that every employee receives a 2% COLA every other year. All employees receive a step each year. In FY26 and FY28, there's a 2% increase is applied to each scale in addition to employee receiving a step. No non-personnel costs remain flat in this projection. And the state funding for FY24 reflect VDOE projections. FY25 and 26 are projections based on a 2% increase from the current biennial budget projection. And in FY27, a projected amount is decreased to 1.7% due to possible LCI revisions. With all the economic development and investment, we anticipate the LCI dropping. And federal funding is projected to increase by 2% each fiscal year on the out years there. So down the left, you'll see the different funds, the federal, general fund, food service, capital fund, and medical trust. I bring your attention to the general fund. This here, as we project all this out, shows the difference, the shortfall between the expenditures and the revenue as we go in the out years, which is, leads into making this sustainable, the increases in our scales, having competitive scales and so forth. Last year, and we thank the governing board for working with us on this line item, establishing a state stabilization fund line item in the governing body's budget for us. Just to bring it back, just a reminder that at the end of the year, on any unexpended funds, we return back to the governing body, and then the governing body has agreed to place that into the line item we call the stabilization fund that we will continue to build to support our salary scales going forward and other unprojected costs. The line item is, at this point in time, the understanding is capped at the amount of 5% of the average total expenditures over the last 5 consecutive years. Anything over that amount, the governing body would take and put back into their own fund balance. And with that, I return it to Dr. Saunders.
Thank you. It was a great presentation. Thank you very much. Slide 8, is that the slide that references the math error, so to speak, that was in the news? Okay. That, because my understanding is that a partial budget was passed by the General Assembly to accommodate the fix for the math error. Do you have any information you can share on that? You want to talk about it?
The General Assembly did not do anything for FY24. What they addressed was an FY23. In FY23, with the projection error, that reduced our revenue by at least 184,000, 284, probably 300, depending on the VPI money too. They've anticipated, they've agreed to correcting that. However, for our ADM dropping, it'll be a wash. It won't, we're going to lose it anyway. So they haven't posted a corrected tool with our current ADM in it, but once we get that, then we'll know exactly where we stand in FY23. Okay. But FY24, they have not touched it all.
Okay.
For that projection.
So, and you were not made whole for FY23?
Not yet. I mean, they're projecting that they'll make us whole, but with our ADM decreasing, that hole will go away.
Okay. Okay.
It'll be eaten up by our decreased ADM.
Thank you for the explanation. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions from the governing body?
I have a question. I know lunch has been covered part of some of the funds that we received federal for all students. Is that going to continue to next school year?
Want to talk about lunch?
I know breakfast.
Oh, lunch, yes.
Breakfast and lunch.
Yes.
Yeah, for the entire school year, FY 2024.
Correct. Yes, currently, the students do not have to pay for lunch, and then our plan is to continue that through next year. However, like I shared with my board previously, we will need to have a discussion going forward after this year. Do we continue to cover the difference between the revenue and expenses ourselves and not charge students going forward? Or do we start charging students for lunch again?
Okay.
But not next year. It would be the year after we have to make that decision.
And then I have just two other questions. Your medical for retirees, how many do you have that right now between retirement before they get to Medicare? Do you have a large number?
It was, I believe there are 7. And what that is, in the past, there was a special program. If they wanted to retire early, the school system agreed to pay the difference between what the subsidy they get from the state and the total premium.
Get to Medicare.
Right.
And then another question, because you use VRS, how many employees do you have in the PLOP program?
I do not know.
Program to keep people, when they're eligible to retire, to stay in. I think it's a 3-year program. In other jurisdictions, they call it the drop. I know VRS calls it the PLOP.
I would have to get that information for you. I don't have that top
It's
of my head.
VRS program.
Okay.
And the other piece, just as a comment, I'd like to see the compression in the future years come down. I think 30 years, and I know it's hard to do that. 30 years is a long time for someone to be here to top out. I mean, VRS, I know, requires 25 years to retire. 30 years is a long time for any, and I've always made that comment before. So I'd like to see some type of compression there down the line or in the future. Just, for rewarding employees, I think it's just tough 30 years, but that's just a comment. But I enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the chair. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions?
Just one.
Ma'am.
Retention, I know that's been a problem, not just here, but overall. Is it continuing is retention still quite challenging?
Yeah, it is. It's a difficult to retain people for a variety of reasons. Salary doesn't fix everything. There are, as you talk about, the idea of 30 years in education is something that I think is no longer something that people think about. And so this idea that people want to try different things and want to move around and we're much more mobile is another challenge for us. And certainly cost of living in this area compared to other areas really is a challenge for us as well. We've got groups out recruiting right now, and we will know a little bit more about the retention level for this year, probably more in the August timeframe.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Follow-up?
No, I think Daryl had a question.
Councilmember Amaya, do you have a question?
I do, but Daryl was first.
Oh,
Thank you.
Councilmember
That's so
Moore.
nice. Oh. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I really greatly appreciate it. Help me understand the huge fund balance in the nutrition program. What brought that about?
Oh, I believe it,
Is that your question?
I believe it was with all the federal funds coming in, supporting all of the food expenditures during the pandemic. It really inflated it. Plus, you saw their wages were under market.
Yes.
So, yeah, that won't continue going forward. We anticipate. Well, we know the federal funds will now start to decrease, so that fund balance will not grow that up to that level again.
Okay. The other question, I'm glad that you're paying for relocation or thinking about paying for relocation to entice people to come to Manassas Park. What are we paying for relocation? Is there a dollar amount attached or associated with that?
You're not going to get very excited when I tell you. So we have some dollar amounts set at around, I think it was $500. And we have signing bonuses. So it's a very minimal amount that we have put in the budget to be able to try to compete with our surrounding jurisdictions. You know, we go to some of these fairs and it's amazing what is happening. But that isn't the only reason, and we certainly can't pay for full relocation costs. We have a dollar amount put aside, and then we're going to try to figure out how do we do that based on where are we drawing some of our candidates from. We have staff members headed to Texas, some of our areas where there's dual language certifications that come naturally within those states. I think those are some of the areas that we've been focusing on to bring that back as well.
Excellent. And then I just want to applaud the superintendent's budget item, although it's unfunded, to enhance our pre-K program. I totally agree with you. I hope somehow we find that money. I think the $130,000, which was budgeted for those positions to increase our pre-K program, I think you're right on the mark that we start young. It will only benefit our city. So I'm just happy that you have it in your budget, and I just will continue to work, and hopefully we'll get that funded at some point.
Thank you.
absolutely, I agree with that. They're little sponges at that.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are, and and we do have we maintain a wait list generally for our students to enter our pre-K program, and so to invite more into our beautiful pre-K center there over at Cougar would be great, and certainly something we'll continue to work towards.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
No? Okay.
You mentioned Texas. Where else are you drawing new staff from?
We have people recruiting. Actually, this week we have them in Buffalo, New York. We have a group in Pennsylvania at Perk today. I think they're there tonight for the fair tomorrow. We have all throughout Virginia. We have identified some HBCUs. We have some in Texas. We've sent some people just really all over to try to find where's the best place to pull from. Some in Ohio. We got one going to App State next week or over spring break. So really, it's across the board. This is recruiting season for teachers. But I will tell you that what I hear back from those recruiting is the pool is not there. The colleges are not necessarily producing teachers or educators like they did back in my day when we were fighting for one job. So it's a different environment, and we're doing a good job to try to engage and really sell and talk about the things that are special here.
Okay, thank you.
Follow-up? Councilmember Amaya?
Back to the school nutrition fund, you said that there was $465,000 that needed to be spent?
That's a shortfall between the expenditures and the revenue, about 465,000. The fund balance needs to be spent down, so the fund balance will address that shortfall and bring the fund balance
Oh, okay.
down for
Understood.
acceptable
Thank you.
levels. You bet.
Follow-up?
Nope.
Okay. Councilmember Javette?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming in. The 14.9 at the budget, does that include the 1.6 capital fund that you guys are projecting the city to fund?
The 1.6 would be in addition to the general fund contribution.
So the general fund was, I think, 14.9 plus the 1.6.
Yeah.
That would be the request.
Oh, no, it was the 13.3 plus the 1.6. So it's 14, you were right first. 14.9 is the total request for the city.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, the
Right,
total
right.
request, right.
Right, so 13.3 for the general, and then 1.6 on top of that, so,
On top
yeah.
of that, so it makes it
14.9.
14.9.
Yeah.
Right, okay. Does that include, where's the 455? Is that included in the total
455.
loss for the FY '24?
The-
The loss? yeah.
No,
The
the
nutrition.
455 is not included in any of the budget. We reduced down, we built our budget based on the fact that we would be losing 455,000.
Okay. So the unfunded slide that you had was kind of short. Is that all that's unfunded? It's kind of hard to believe that that was the only cuts made with a shortfall of 455 and with the pay increases that you guys are proposing.
So, no, I mean, there's a lot that goes into the budget process. There's a lot of conversations. I think Mr. Lyon spoke to, we have our principals, our teachers, our directors, our executive directors, all having conversations for about 2 or 3 months. There are plenty of items that are on a list that are priorities, but did not make it into the budget. And so to be realistic about what are some unfunded priorities that, that would rise to the top of the list, that is what you see on this slide. There's certainly materials, resources, additional staff requests, certainly all types of things that come from the departments as we ask those questions. But the hard part of the budget process is sifting through all of that and trying to prioritize what does need to be funded.
Okay.
I have a quick follow. Oh, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
The capital projects, what are those?
Good question.
That's a CIP plan that Mr. Neff brings to the governing board for approval, everything in that plan.
Yeah, have we seen that plan for?
No,
Not yet.
it's been briefed to the planning commission first, and then we'll be briefing the governing body on all city and schools capital projects in mid-April.
Okay. And then I want to follow up on the athletic department. Do we have a football team?
Well, that's a good question. So we have a great staff member, Coach Teague, who has been hired at the high school. You may have seen him on Twitter out there around. He's been working to develop our students and really engage at the school level. He's also a great educator in our school as well, and so we were pleased to bring him on to really rebuild that program. So we have every intention of moving forward with engaging our students in a football program as we start in the fall. I will also say we were lucky to also hire his wife as one of our school counselors at the high school, and so it's a great addition to our faculty, and in addition to some great positive things in our athletic department.
Great. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.
Follow-up?
No.
No?
Just a quick
Councilmember
follow-up.
Moore?
Yeah, Superintendent Saunders, the list that you have on the screen now, is that prioritized, 1, 2, 3, or they're just in any random order?
It is prioritized. I think our original plan was to include that 5% average increase at the teacher level. You've seen some of our surrounding jurisdictions. Everyone is around a 5% average increase for their teachers. And so we spent a lot of time last year and work last year and dedication to bringing our scale to be competitive and trying to remain competitive year after year is the challenge. So that would be the priority, if I was asked for that. The second thing would be really supporting our behaviors and our teachers and our educators with these different kinds of resources, either in this way through contracted services or through other means of really identifying what our students need and what our staff needs to support them, and then our pre-K.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing, and the only criticism I would, I guess, add is the difference in the pay raises from the managerial side to the teachers. The pay raise is great, but I think to keep the managerial above the teachers a little bit, with an 8% increase versus a 4%, I feel like it should be kind of leveled out, either the same as the teachers, kind of for a morale point of view. And I understand you're trying to close the gap, but we're also trying to close the gap for the teachers as well, where you have the highest retention, recruit problems.
Absolutely. So I'll speak to it, and then I'll let Mr. Lyon kind of talk about the methodology around that. I would take you back to last year, where our teacher scale, our average increase on the teacher scale was about 8.9% as we adjusted over to a step in salary schedule. And, the challenge in moving from the min-max to the step and scale is that in some places you saw some staff members would see very large increases. So if you were a staff member that has been with us for 20 years, you likely saw a very large increase in your teacher scale in your salary, because you were stuck in one place, you weren't able to move based on your years, and you were then awarded your years of service within the step schedule. The managerial scale, I can tell you that we saw the majority, our focus was on the classified staff to make sure we gave as much as we could in that classified change. Those would be our food service, bus drivers, parent liaisons as identified there, and to try to really bring them to market. So that's why we started with a 3% increase across the board for them, regardless of where they were placed on the scale, and then added in the other piece. And the managerial, we just simply slid them across. There was no minimal increase. Some of our managerial staff would see, $100, where some that have been with us for many, many years also saw those larger increases. So that does affect the averages. The averages look a little bit different. So that's an average across the board. That is an individual increases across the board. So I would just share that sort of explanation. I don't know.
No, that's a good point.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I don't know.
And then we moved some positions from 11 months to 10 to 12 months.
Correct. We also made some contract adjustments at that managerial level, specifically around that curriculum area. You saw that as one of the priorities, that curriculum alignment. Making sure that we have the right resources and the right documents and the pacing guides and the different kinds of things that are required for our teachers. As we talk about retention, we want to make sure when new teachers come in that we have documents and plans and resources to provide them so that they feel comfortable. And so we added some days to contracts at that coordinator specialist level to ensure that they had time in the summer to do what they needed to do to hopefully prepare for our new staff as they arrive.
And then for the stepping scale is based on tenure, I guess, how many years they've been with the school?
So the initial placement is based on how many years of service they have within the current job, within the job that they are holding. So, you may have held a position in the division for multiple years at something else, and now you've moved into, you might be an instructional assistant and you've moved into a teacher. When you were placed on the teacher scale, you have years of experience based on your
That's
teaching
right, so they don't
experience.
start over from the scale. What I'm trying to say is, like, say if the teacher moves up to a specialist or director, right? Their years of service would match that pay stepping scale.
their years of service would match the job that they are placed in. So if you move from a teacher to a specialist, you're starting at step one,
Okay.
or you're starting at the beginning again. And having experienced that myself as a teacher going to an assistant principal, and an assistant principal to go into a principal, and then moving from that to the division level.
Yeah,
We do have some regulations in place that do allow for when you change from grade to grade, there are certain percentages of increases that happen so that people don't fall behind either.
Follow up?
No, that's it. Thank you for your time.
Any other comments or questions?
Just real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
And you may not have this on you, but what is our graduation rate? And how's that compared statewide? And, I mean, I know it's never apple to apples comparison, but statewide and national-wide.
I'm going to give you that at another time.
Yep.
My brain isn't on graduation rate at the moment, so I want to say I know what it is, but I don't want to give you the wrong number.
No worries, I understand.
And I can probably give you that before we leave here, because I can look on the school report card that the VDOE publishes. Our graduation rate is listed there. It's an area that we continue to want to work on. We are a fully accredited school division, and graduation rate is one of those criteria that is used to identify that. So we are fully accredited, but it is an area we continue to want to work on. As we compare to the state, I think we're similar to communities and school divisions that are like us, cities like this, and populations like us. We are very similar. But we are fully accredited, all 4 schools.
Okay, thank you.
On slide 13, does the economic disadvantage red line correspond to what we have often referred to as the free or reduced lunch percentage?
Well, since we are, a CEP, a free lunch system, we are no longer processing applications for free and reduced lunch. This is based on another factor, I believe, through direct certification with the social services and so forth. So, which is at around, I believe, around 40 or 52% or so around in there. So right now we project that to be level.
Okay, so, well, I wondered if the red line sort of corresponded.
Yes, it would be the old free and reduced lunch.
I'm sorry.
It would be the traditional free and reduced lunch
Okay.
data point that you're used to. It's just we don't process those applications now, and there's a direct certification process that we use with social services, I believe, for welfare and something.
Sure, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. We almost have an answer? Okay.
Madam Mayor,
Any last-minute comments or questions? Yes.
would I be able to ask a couple questions? Just because I think you guys need to be aware of a few things. So, can you guys go back to slide 38? Yeah, right. It's hard to see. I don't know if you can zoom into that table on the right, but I just want the governing body to be aware. I wanted to ask a clarifying question. It shows there that the capital fund has variances, but it shows the city revenue for it. So I just want to make sure that those aren't variances, right? So you have, yeah, you see the capital fund, look at the variance section for the capital fund. It shows negative 2.6 million.
Right. Yeah, that's.
Those shouldn't be. Okay, yeah, so those shouldn't be, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, so that will fix then the total variances on the bottom. But you're still going to have some variances, so.
There was must have been a problem with the cell, because it didn't.
Yeah, it didn't populate there. Okay. Can you scroll up a little bit now?
You bet.
The general, this is the piece that I really want the governing body to be aware of for the city as we look at all of our funding challenges. Yeah, right there. So projections, you see general fund, look at the variances starting in FY '26 and beyond. We have a structural issue. I mean, the schools are staying disciplined. They're controlling their materials, they're controlling their purchases, they're controlling everything. And it's really salaries and benefits that are going up for them to remain competitive. But it's state funding that you'll notice that has started to slow down, with both ADM decreasing and overall funding for schools dipping as well. So the city has a structural issue here that I just want you guys to be aware of. And you can see it on this slide. So I just needed you guys to see that growing structural deficit that we have, that we're going to have to figure out how to fund. So I hate to I know it's positive, but I hate to point that out, but that's a real issue that we're going to have to think of as a city.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For clarification, it's been a long day, so my brain's probably not working quite well. What do you mean by structural,
So what it is you can see that, I'm sorry, I'm going to walk up there. So if you look at their budget, they have a very disciplined budget in that they're not touching their other expenditures except for salaries and benefits.
Right.
But for them to remain competitive for salary and benefits, you can see the increases in those total outweigh what the projections are coming from the state and the city.
okay,
So unless the state increases the funding, so we've been lucky since roughly 2017, we've been seeing like $2 million state increases for the schools. Those days look like they're gone. And so now it's going to be up to the city to figure out how to fund this. I just needed you guys to see that we have some issues.
so we have to start thinking about that
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
Well, hopefully our governor will keep to his promises and fund the schools like he promised in his campaign.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Saunders, do you have the information? I don't. Okay, okay. No, I was just checking, I
That's
didn't
okay.
want to.
If you get to us later, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, we appreciate.
Sarah,
Oh, yes,
this is Dean. I
Cit-
just had one comment.
City
Back
Attorney.
to slide 39, please.
Go ahead.
Hi, just down at the bottom there, I just want to make a comment, just point out that, at the very last bullet, it says, funds shall be returned to the governing body. I just want to point out they're not really ever leaving the governing body. It's just, probably a better way to say it would be that the funds would no longer be placed in this line item. I only say that because we had problems in the past. I just want to make sure there's an understanding of how that works.
Okay. Thank you, Dean. Everybody is shaking their head, yes. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
Okay. If there's no other comments or questions, Laszlo, you look like you might have a question. No. Oh, okay, you look puzzled. Okay.
Just thinking a few years down the road.
Okay. Thank you so much. We appreciate the wonderful presentation. We appreciate the turnout. 5 of you to be here for the presentation. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and a shout out to Laszlo and his team for, the city manager and his team for continuing to collaborate with us, and whether it's the police department, the fire department back there, the city team, I appreciate the collaboration and the work together, so thank you.
Likewise.
Okay. Moving on to consent agenda. Consent agenda consists of approval of the minutes of March 7th, 2023, approval of an authorization for city manager to sign an agreement with Air Cleaning Technology for the installation of ply movement vehicle exhaust extraction system in the fire station apparatus bays at a cost not to exceed $109,469.80 as presented, subject to final review by city attorney. Approval of an authorization for the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the resurfacing of the fire station parking lot with Branscombe Paving Company in an amount not to exceed $34,290.96 as presented, subject to final review by city attorney. Approval of an authorization for the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the purchase of 4 mobile radios from Wireless Communications at a cost not to exceed $32,165.32 as presented, subject to final review by city attorney. Approval of an ordinance declaring city equipment as surplus and authorizing city manager to sell the surplus equipment. Approval of an authorization for the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the banquet hall floor polished concrete installation and any expansion joint repairs from the GNL Stone Grainer LLC in an amount not to exceed $34,721.50 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney, and endorsement of the Potomac and Rappahannock Transportation Commission grant applications, and authorize the mayor to sign the attached letter of support. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to unfinished business. First, we have sale of city-owned property, the public hearing having already been held on March 7th, 2023. And that would be city
And
attorney.
Mayor,
Yeah.
yeah, if I could just have staff pull up the purchase and sale agreement that I emailed earlier.
Okay.
I just want to go over the changes that were made since the public hearing. Okay, if you go to the top of page 3, please. So this is the red line version. This just shows Councilmember or Vice Mayor Mensing had asked this to be put in there. So that not only are they leasing space, but they are also have an operating business. And I put in their Manassas Park business license as well, just to make sure we get that. And then if you could go then to the top, or to page 4, please. Well, that's just a minor thing. You can just ignore that one. That was just go to page 13, please. And 23, you'll see that I added in there that we can go ahead and sign this, or we can sell the property to our EDA, or we can assign it to the EDA. This allows us the flexibility just in case we're not able as a city to float the loan. Because basically we're going to be floating a loan for 15 years for the sale of the property over on Route 28. And so this, I haven't done a deep dive to see if we can do it. I think we can do it, but there's a downside chance we might have to go to the EDA. If so, I want to make sure that we can still have this go forward without having to come back to the governing body. And then I also want to point out that because we are floating a loan, we're probably going to have to hire a financial attorney, because I don't think I'm up to the task of doing this.
You're gonna have to hire a financial attorney? Is that what you said?
Yes, just someone who does this for a living, because it's going to be kind of a steep learning curve for me to do this. I haven't done it before, and it's a lot more than I'm right now that I'm prepared to commit to.
Okay.
And this isn't an
It requires
skill
a
set
skill set that I don't have.
Yeah. This is just like when we issue a bond, we bring in financial advisors and bond counsel. We'd have to bring in, again, a financial attorney for this transaction. But it's not an FTE. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, there is some stuff I can do, but this is a little bit more complex, and I'm afraid that I might miss something on this.
Okay.
Have you concluded your remarks, Dean?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay.
Take any questions you may have.
Okay, any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Really quick, and it might be in here and I may have missed it. Do we have a timeline from when we signed the contract to opening doors?
So he estimated two years. It's really going to depend on how long he takes for the rezoning, site planning, building permitting, in terms of getting us information and how good his engineers are in getting us information so Calvin and his team don't have to keep sending it back for reviews. But I think he said once that process is done, he believes it's about a 12-month construction. So we're banking in about a year for all the administrative components and reviews, and then a year for construction.
So we're looking sometime in calendar year 2025.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say thank you, Dean, for putting in my suggestion.
Okay. If there are no.
You're very welcome.
If there are no further comments or questions, the recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the mayor to sign the purchase and sale agreement with RRM Realty LLC for the sale of .75709 acres of city-owned land on Route 28 as presented and subject to final review by city attorney.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Moving on to 8B, which is the restated and amended service agreement for the Upper Occoquan Service Authority, the public hearing having already been held on March 7th, 2023. Do you have anything that you need to say, Dean? Or it's Calvin, excuse me.
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to recap what the actual issue at hand is. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. The 1972, the original UOSA agreement, was stated between the parties, Manassas, Manassas Park, Prince William County, and Fairfax County to form the Upper Occoquan Service Authority. That agreement's been restated several times. Most recently in 2015, the agreement was restated. This would be an amendment to that agreement that is primarily intended to address the issue of capacity at the plant to increase that capacity to 60 million gallons per day. Since Manassas Park does not require any additional capacity, there is no financial impact of the increase in capacity on the city of Manassas Park. The other issue of restatement or of amendment here is the way that exceedances in flow or exceedances in pollutants are handled. This actually provides some flexibility to jurisdictions that bump up against their allowable flows, and therefore the city staff supports that because we have in the past had major I&I events that have pushed us close to our capacity, and we would like a less stringent way of dealing with that ourselves. So,
Okay,
any
thank you,
questions?
Calvin. I went to Dean first because I know he had to review the contract, the agreement for legal purposes. So, Dean, do you have any last-minute comments on this?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions? Okay, we're good to go. The recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the mayor to sign the 2022 restated and amended service agreement for the Upper Occoquan Service Authority.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Okay, thank you. And next is 8C, is an information update regarding the status of the city's new ERP system.
Yeah, this was just uploaded just so you could see the final contract. You didn't have the contract originally. You would just authorize the city manager to negotiate and sign the contract. This is more just for an informational, so you know that we're finally moving and that we can start having some action on replacing our ERP system.
Okay. Any questions for Dean? Comments, questions? Okay, apparently there are no comments or questions. And thank you, Dean, and no action is required on our part.
That is correct. Yeah, the city manager already has authority to sign.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Okay, moving on.
You're welcome.
Moving on to new business. 9A is no commercial parking sign study findings and recommendation. And Laszlo, I think we all need to congratulate staff for saving the city $750,000. That is fantastic. That's wonderful. Yeah, it's exciting.
Good evening again. I'm Calvin Odell, the Director of Community Development. In December of 2022, Wallace Montgomery completed a study that proposed locations for sign placement to allow police to enforce our no commercial vehicle parking ordinance. Wallace Montgomery's plan is to install around 750 signs, and they also produced a GIS layer or map that staff can follow in the installation of these signs that will allow us to track this installation in our work order management system. Also in December, the governing body authorized the unfreezing of 2 positions that were previously frozen in Public Works crew to execute the installation of the signs. The cost savings in that versus hiring a contractor to do the same was around $133,000. We also noticed that when we originally put this out to bid that there was quite a significant markup on sign materials. The city seems to get a better deal on sign making materials and sign posts and things like that. So we decided to enter and solicit for our own materials for this project. On February 22nd, we issued a solicitation for these sign materials with bids due on 3/1/23. And Corman Signs came in at $83,536.32. Traffic Safety Supplies came in at $91,265.00. Therefore, staff is recommending that we proceed with the order for Corman Signs, and we add a 5% contingency to that to cover any unknowns. 5% contingency would be $4,176.82, bringing the total not to exceed expenditure amount to $87,713.14. Any questions?
Thank you, Calvin. The 5% contingency, that seems a little small. Is that sufficient?
Also, we have a map showing us where each sign needs to go. We know what signs need to go in what locations. We're hoping that just fasteners, maybe a pole that's slightly taller here and there, but a 5% contingency at this time seems pretty reasonable, considering we already know how many signs we need to install.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
When are we expecting them to go up?
So, of the unfrozen positions, one staff member has been hired. I just turned in the new hire paperwork today. So that position will be starting soon. We had a potential candidate for the other unfrozen position. Not sure if that's going to pan out or not through the offer process. But if not, and we don't have any candidates to interview after that, qualified individuals, we may have to discuss with Laszlo potentially shifting a streets guy over temporarily to work on this project, but we want to get this project started very quickly. So we're exploring all options right now.
Follow up?
I just had a clarification. Would all 3 signs be on one pole, or it just depends on the location? We'd have one sign or the other? So they would talk about commercial vehicles being prohibited except Monday, and then towaway. So all 3 would be on one sign?
All 3 would have to be on one pole.
So help me understand, why, is it just the way signs are designed that it wasn't a sign that said all of that in one sign?
True. I think it's just over time, some of these variables are bound to change.
Yeah.
And you might not change the entire fact that there's no parking, but you might change the time restrictions, the days of the week or the times. You may make an ordinance change that modifies that. And it's easier to change this placard and cheaper than to replace the entire sign. This tow-away zone is, by the MUTCD, is always a separate placard. So the MUTCD does lay out signs in this manner with full-size blanks, placard blanks, so I think it's just, we wouldn't be the first people to realize that it's much cheaper just to replace a portion than the entire sign. But that is the way it's spelled out in the MUTCD, so we're going to follow that guidance.
Oh, very informative, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Calvin.
Follow up?
That's it.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, for the times, is that what we decided, 8 AM to 8 PM? Is that- and Monday through Friday?
Yeah, we did, 2 years ago, we
Yeah.
decided that.
Yeah, I know, it's been a long time, so I'm trying to remember. I mean, 'cause I know that some of them do work on the weekends. Why don't we not add weekends on there?
What do you mean?
Like, if they have work,
Because the idea behind it, because the issue is that a lot of folks that are coming and leaving, either they work for a company and they're parking their work trucks out there all weekend long, taking away resident parking. As well, there are people that don't even live in the city and just use our streets.
oh, no, this includes people that do, like, work at the home temporarily.
Yeah. In my case, they park in the driveway.
Yeah, they could park in the driveway.
But if they're
But if
working
they
at
don't
the-
have driveway,
But
then,
if they're working at the home, they're not gonna get, if they're there to work at the home, I thought we had like an exception
I don't remember.
in the ordinance.
I don't-
There is.
Yeah, I think they have to park on the driveway.
So if they don't have a driveway, Saturday, Sunday, that contractor can't work at the home.
Well, let me get back to you on that one, but I'll have to see how much enforcement discretion we have if we talk to them and they say, hey, we're moving in an hour, right? We're just here to do quick work, but let me make sure we have that
I mean,
discretion to do
people that are
Because we
movers-
just, the intent is to Councilmember Hampton's point, we just don't want people just parking their vehicles there all weekend. So I get your point that if someone's just there for an hour or two to do some work,
Right.
perhaps some enforcement discretion on that piece.
Well,
But,
yeah, that or, and then, like, moving trucks mostly happen on weekends. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna be there for a couple hours, so,
Well, I think the police, let's give the police some credit, right?
yeah.
The officers patrol, and I speak a little bit from having a brother who spent 25 years on the police department and speaking with the police officers themselves. Give them a little bit of credit. They drive the streets. They pretty much know, they know the houses. Maybe some of the ones that are kind of new, not so much, but those that are seasoned, they know the houses. They know, they got an idea of what car belongs where. If there's a Mayflower moving truck or whatever the moving truck is out in front of a house, and they see the guys coming, or the workers bringing stuff off or bringing stuff in.
Yeah, I would hope they will make that
they'll-
assumption that,
That let's give them some credit. They pretty much know that they're not going to be sit there
Okay,
parked
that's
all week,
fine.
all for 24 hours.
But then the other part is we want to restrict them from overnight parking, right? So what happens at 9 PM?
Well, first of all, there's noise ordinances that go into effect.
No, the commercial parking after 8 PM.
Well, unless there's like an emergency, like, I don't know, your hot water heater blew up. Chances of people doing work at 8 PM at night are very slim.
No, now we're going back to the people that drive commercial vehicles for work.
They park in their driveway.
But, I'm saying that sign that basically says 8, till 8 PM. So they go park overnight till 8 AM.
No, it's the opposite.
No commercial parking.
That's an exception.
Except,
Oh, yeah, that's right,
weekday,
you're right,
yeah.
you're right.
Yeah, you
Except
kind of have
8
to
AM
read it a little like backwards.
What's backwards?
Because.
Oh, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, that's.
I don't know how
what
else to
was thinking.
describe it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I do have a question if,
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
I'm done, yeah.
Yeah.
so Lazo, now that we kind of have a rough timeline, do you have a timeline or are you building out a timeline for an awareness campaign?
No, once Calvin and I meet, once hopefully the second candidate works out and we have a timeline for them to start working, we're all going to meet up as a team with police and Calvin's team and my team and come up with a communication strategy, because then we'll have the timeline. Again, the goal is 3 months of advertising and then 1 month of, enforcement without actual penalties.
Might I make a suggestion? We have that community event on April 22nd. Can we have just some initial information there perhaps on this?
Sort of like coming soon.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can have the code enforcement team provide something to Yvette, who's putting the event together.
Yeah, we've got the folks, we might as well, because I think it takes, from when I used to do this, 5 to 7 times telling people before it sinks in. Probably might take a little bit longer because this is a radical change, but
Follow-up? Okay.
No, thank you.
Questions? Comments or questions? Okay, apparently there are no further questions, so the recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign any necessary contractual documents for the purchase of no commercial parking sign materials from Corman Sign Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $87,713.14 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to 9B, which is switching data tracking platform. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. What I have for you tonight is
Hey, Chief, can you hit escape on the keyboard, just so that doesn't? Yeah, perfect, thank you.
is a request that's going to take effect for us for FY23 Q4. And what it is, it's a prorated sum of money for $2,137.95. So what this is currently we use 2 tracking platforms for software, right? So we have fire and EMS data that goes into image trend, along with a lot of other ancillary things like the checking of the drug box, the checking of the apparatus every morning. And then we have a Blackboard program, which we do all of our training for EMS and fire on there. So what we found out was that image trend right now, their customer service is getting really bad for us. And it's hard for us to deal with getting data out that we put in. And then when we started working with the Vector Solution Group, it's so much more user-friendly on the back end. We noticed that when we were doing our ISO review, going, okay, pull this data out, pull this data out, pull this data out. They allowed us to set up the Vector Solutions a little early and play around with it. It's going to be so much more better for us for tracking of data, right? So that when my boss asks for this data, we can provide those analytics to him on a regular basis. So for FY24, that money's already been built in. What we need is the prorated money to get this started April 1st of this year. And that, like I said, that figure was $2,137.95. So that's the purpose of the request tonight. And if you got any questions, I'd be glad to.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So this is simply a transfer of some of the department records management system
Yes, ma'am. Just from one platform to the other.
Okay, is there a reason that all of it's not being transferred, or did I miss something?
So we're currently, right now, the Vector Solutions, the Blackboard program for training, it does not allow a component for tracking of fire and EMS call volume that goes in there. All the records that have to be tracked for, 20-some years. For all that data has to stay around with us for 20-some years. We are looking for another platform to do fire and EMS tracking as Image Trend starts to, as the contract fades away, because we do know that we're going to need another platform coming. So at some point, we will present you a request for another fire and EMS platform for record management.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Yes.
I have a question about the RMS system. You share that with Prince William County, correct?
No.
No, you don't. So you have your own RMS?
We have our own. We originally, in 2012, we went on the state's program, which the state had Image Trend.
Right.
We did the state program, which was free for about 2 years, and we realized we couldn't track the data that Manassas Park wanted to track. So we went and bought our own software and started using that. And so, no,
So
we
this
don't.
will just interface between the two?
Right, so we have a link, a patch set between Prince William County and us that goes back and forth.
Okay. Thank you.
Currently, Prince William County and Manassas City are starting to go into this thing called ESO,
Yeah, I've heard of that.
and that's where I think we'll be heading in
You should go to
once our
that,
contract.
hopefully. Thank you.
Quick follow-up. So Chief, so the learning curve with Vector Solutions is probably not going to be that steep since you guys are already use it, and you're already accustomed to it?
It's going to be very minimal.
Okay.
Like our training captain, our training battalion chief, Chief Nauberger, and our assistant chief, Robert Gilmore, the fire marshal, they've been in the backside of this, working this for months now. And they, both of them are like, this is the way to go.
Okay.
So being the subject matter experts they are on this, I'm going to refer to them, and they said that this is the way to go. And so,
They're the ones that have to use it, not I, so, yeah, I agree with you. Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
Comments or yes, ma'am.
I kind of have a question for Laszlo. I saw on this that this is something that you would have normally approved, but it's just outside of your spending authority. I was wondering, what is your spending authority or limit?
It's $25,000.
Do you know what Manassas City happens to?
Yeah, their purchasing manager, who is like a few steps below the city manager, is at $250,000. Most of the time, the jurisdictions, if the item's already budgeted, the city manager has approval to sign off on it.
Okay.
And then others have different thresholds, but
Okay.
yeah.
I just want to put out there, that might be something we want to look at.
We do.
You do.
I couldn't hear, I'm sorry.
We might want to look into raising his spending authority, or?
Well, we
I don't
had
know
this
the
discussion
steps,
earlier
but-
this year. We did. And the decision was that we wanted to keep everything on the up and up with the residents.
Yeah,
Since it's their money, and that's why we all decided to kind of keep it out at it is right now.
I agree with that, but for items that are already budgeted, we've already put that out to the residents.
I think that's probably another discussion for another day, and
Yes,
probably.
and I'm just saying we should have that discussion.
I think we should have the
As long as
discussion
we
next meeting.
As long as we retain maximum transparency for the
Next meeting.
public,
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, any questions or comments for the chief? No? Okay. The recommended motion is that the governing body approve and authorize the city manager to sign an amendment to the agreement with Vector Solutions and modifies the scope of services to include service for training management and other services over 4 years and 3 months in an amount not to exceed $34,875.67 as presented and subject to final city attorney review.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Next, fourth quarter FY '23 budget appropriations, city and schools.
All right. Nothing really to add here. You can see we're not, our spending is way below where it should be, but we still request full appropriations, so we never get caught in the FY16 trap of going over some appropriated items and getting dinged in our audit. But we remain committed to spending just what we need and hopefully coming up with big surpluses at the end of the year.
Questions or comments for Laszlo? Okay. There are two motions. The first one is that the governing body appropriate $26,111 $26,111,381 to the city, which includes $205,644 for Bull Run ASAP for fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Second motion is that the governing body appropriate $15,585,510 to city schools for fourth quarter of fiscal year 2023.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment? Seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on to manager's report.
All right. Good evening, governing body. Tonight we have 3 items. We'll kick it off first with the Department of Social Services FY23 mid-year review. Turn over to Randy.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and it looks like we cleared the floor, Yvette and I, so it's us to the end. Thank you for allowing me to present my department information to you this evening. The first slide here you'll see is some department highlights. We were able to go back to some of the pre-COVID activities that we've done in previous years, and one of those is to offer a trunk or treat to the Montessori school below us. It's really great. The kids come up dressed in costumes, staff in costumes, and we hand out candy. We participated in the turkey giveaway in November with member of the council, 2, and a lot of volunteers. We did have National Adoption Day. I think here you can see 2 of our youth with their new forever families, along with our 2 interns, our family supervisor, family services supervisor, and Emma Gonzalez, our Family Services Specialist 1, and of course that is at the courthouse on the National Adoption Day, and we did have Councilwoman Messing that joined us that day, so a really cool opportunity and event to participate in. We did have a staff member have a December airing on the Panorama. That is the Spanish bilingual, well, actually, I think it's all Spanish, yep, featured community recording that it's put out on YouTube, and she was able to conduct a brief interview about the programs and the services that are offered at our department. We did have an adopt foster youth and family event again in December, and here you can see, I can assure you that she has a big giant smile on her face under that green square there. We're going to try to do a better job going forward at the turkey giveaways and the adoption days of just taking photos and capturing more of the great work that our department does with the community. So hopefully in future presentations to come, I can share more photos with you. Oh, and lastly, we had 2 remaining staff that had not, 3, that had not participated in the MANT training. My department had that training back in July, brought that training opportunity up to Laszlo and Valerie of HR, which then moved through to the grant that Sarah Barnett handles, and a lot of city staff member were able to participate in that training. It's a safety training, so I feel really good that all of my staff now have that training. Our mid-year staffing levels, we have 20 full staff employees, 2 part-time, 2 interns, so that's a total of 22 paid staff. This is some of my great individuals that I have here. We did Team Manassas Park DSS shirts for Christmas this year, so we're ready to take on any other departments and any activities, you know, if they want. A long time ago, many years ago, I remember we had a Jenga competition that was held at the community center, and DSS still has the plaque on our wall that we were the winners. I believe it was against PD and Parks and Rec, and we took the trophy. So we're ready for our championship rematch there with our T-shirts. We do currently have a couple vacancies. We did have our Family Services 3 leave us for a federal job. We did have a vacancy as well in one family service specialist, and we've also been notified that in June we're going to lose one of our admin assistants. She's decided to stay home and be with her kids. So all of our staff are at that point where we've had them probably brand new, a year, or we're at that gap where they're 5 or more years. So I think that our department might start to see some of that turnover of just people, kind of what the schools were saying, you know, maybe they've had their fill of social services and they want to see what's out there. So as far as I'm aware, you know, our exit interviews are going well. I don't think people are leaving because they're necessarily unhappy with DSS. I think that it's just the way the world has changed and they're looking for different opportunities. I do have slides here where the first quarter numbers are there and then the second quarter numbers, just so you can kind of see the gradual increase. And I'm going to just flip here to my notes. It's bizarre not to have the slides in front of you. Excuse me. Let's see here. Okay, so just here in the first quarter numbers, you can see that July, the numbers drop slightly. That's typical. School lets out. It's just historical that summer, usually in July, our numbers do get slower. But then when school starts up, you can see there in August that our walk-ins and our phone calls and just the applications jump up. And then in September here, you can see that the EBT card issuance actually jumped up, and that was a result of the SNAP EBT cards that were issued to school-aged children. There was a lot of confusion on the state level. Multiple cards were sent out. There was also a letter sent out to families saying that if the funds weren't utilized, that they were going to shut the cards down. So we found that we saw a huge uptick in individuals coming into the agency. And now moving into just the second quarter, October through January. December, I'm not sure if you guys recall, but we had an outbreak of COVID at our department, and we had to close our lobby down for a week or two, I believe it was. So I'm pretty sure that's the drop in our visitors and our phone calls. And then in January, you can see things picked back up, and I believe that, and they spiked actually, I believe that's a result of the mass announcements of the pandemic unwinding and just notifications going out that benefits were going to start to be renewed and eligibility redetermined. We had a lot of inquiries, people walking in or calling, asking about the letters they received and whatnot. And then dropping down more into our benefits number. Here in the first quarter, you can see that pretty much all numbers pretty much stay the same in the benefits unit. Slight increase. But then in Q2, again, numbers staying pretty steady. However, if you remember in November, we have our energy assistance program that operates. So you're seeing fuel applications there for the EA applications in November. Let's see, moving on to services. Again, pretty steady, and then in September when school starts back up, there's a large increase in the number of intakes and reports that we receive. There were a lot of changes to childcare this year that went into effect in July. You'll see that our childcare applications went up. A lot of the eligibility requirements were reduced, allowing more people to be eligible and for our waiting list to be reduced. A lot of that funding stemmed from the pandemic funding issued. And then Q2, you can see here that actually the number of intakes reduced December and then popped back up in January. This has been a big help in the sense that we are short-staffed with 2 workers in that unit right now. So it's been a bit of a blessing. It's allowing workers to get caught up on case notes and documentation and whatnot. And I always like to pull out the CSA and foster care numbers to a separate slide. Our CSA case count pretty much stays the same. Those are our, majority of them are our IEP youth through the schools. So many of those youth come in kindergarten and stay until they graduate, upwards of 21 to 23 years old. They can still receive CSA funding if they're in school. Our foster care numbers, you all recall it went up to 22 at one point. These are end of the year numbers, so you'll see that number at 16. Part of that has to do with the fact that we've had, we now have 5 youth who've been adopted, so that's just fantastic. Many of the youth that you saw in foster care as part of the count have now been adopted, and they're pushed into an adoption caseload, which is easier on the worker in the sense that there's not as much interaction with the family, whereas when they're in foster care, there's monthly visits and appointments and a lot of court dates and whatnot. So that's also been a big help with allowing my services staff to stay on top of things while being short-staffed. And just as a reminder, these services are funded through 4E, the majority of them, which are 100% reimbursable. And the other youth are funded by CSA, which has that higher match rate of the 4.273%. And these numbers are through January.
And actually, it's a typo. It should be 42.73%.
Yep.
Not 0.4273.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it should be a 42% match for CSA.
Yeah, not 0.42. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Laszlo.
Sorry about that. Should delete the decimal or the percentage.
Yep. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
So now that the end of the pandemic has been officially declared, what is the future impact of that declaration upon your department?
Well, I can tell you just from experience of this week. The state put out a broadcast last week saying that their first batch of renewals were being mailed out on the 20th. And just Monday alone, we had 26 residents walk in with Medicaid renewals. And if I go back to our walk-in numbers of what they are a month, if we continued on that rate, we're going to be in trouble.
26 since yesterday?
26 in one day.
Wow.
Monday, 26 residents walked in with the Medicaid renewals that they received over the weekend. And, there are a lot of confused individuals thinking that they're going to lose their benefits. Some of them have never received benefits until the pandemic happened from life changes. So it's just a lot of admin and customer service related issues that we're dealing with right now. We've tried to put a lot of checks and balances in place. One being, we've partnered with a navigator. Her name is Ruth Alvarez, and she's coming to the office on Mondays and Wednesdays between 9 and 4 and taking appointments or walk-ins and assisting individuals with their applications, their renewals, and she is Spanish speaking. So that's been a big help. Again, I've mentioned our rotation cycle that we decided to do is just stay with the month and continue on regardless of the year. We're going to just stick with the month and go on. But honestly, I'm not sure. And the state has not been very forthcoming. The budget hasn't been passed yet, so there's still a lot of uncertainty about funding, whether or not they're going to provide overtime funding or allow localities to use that funding to add additional staff. The majority of directors are asking for more staff. The current staff we have already are overwhelmed. They don't want to work overtime when they're already, overwhelmed with what they're dealing with. Our agency also has a lot of new staff. We've only have our supervisor and 2 other workers that actually have conducted renewals for Medicaids. Our other staff were hired during the pandemic when everything was on hold. So we're really just trying to encourage mental health, do what you can when you're here, provide that great customer service, do what you can, but don't get burnt out, to be honest.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
Have you seen an increase of CPS intervening in issues with parents who are having substance issues with the fentanyl crisis, with some of that that's going on?
Yes, the majority of our
Have you-
cases.
And I know your team does a great job. Social services in the city has always done a great job. My concern is, that is the state giving you additional teeth to be able to go in, CPS to go in? Because back in many years ago, CPS in the Commonwealth of Virginia was ranked 48th out of 50th because of the ability, what the state gave them to remove children who were in a bad situation. And they just came back, where you had to provide a plan, and they'd go back, and you'd have individuals, children, go back in a home where fentanyl drug use is rampant. Has there been any movement on that?
Well, we use what is called a risk assessment in Oasis. It's a tool. So as far as determining how quickly we remove and for what reasons, we follow, what pretty much the guidance tells us to do. There are factors that can make the risk level higher, which could include, drug abuse or, an infant being born drug addicted and whatnot. But as far as like additional funding dedicated, no.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much, Randy.
Thanks.
Much appreciated.
Okay, now we have a community services update. I'll start off with the first slide, just kind of a reminder of an org chart of what this entity does. There's no actual director, just the assistant city manager fills in for that role of managing this division. We started off when we created this with about 4.5 FTEs. We eliminated this position, and instead the part-time admin assistants who are part of the customer service team help fill in for that. And then this position was also eliminated, the mental health coordinator. The public health coordinator takes on that responsibility. As a next step, remember we lost our economic development coordinator. You guys authorized me to hire a part-time position in the interim so we can focus our resources on ERP implementation. I was able to recruit someone, and they're going to start on April 10th. The good news is they have strong background in events planning. Remember, in our long-range budget, we have the downtown events planner. I believe between this person and myself, next year, when this position was supposed to be brought on, instead of having 2 full-time positions, just have one in between myself and that person. We can cover these 2 down the road. But she'll start off as a part-time position per what you guys authorized, but she has a strong background in helping to establish what Manassas was doing with their downtown events as well, and can help me out with the small business programs while I focus on the larger economic development recruitment. So just wanted to provide that update for the organization itself, community service, and I'll turn it over to Yvette.
Sorry. Thank you. Good evening.
Welcome.
Mayor Rochelle, council members. Yvette Monet, housing coordinator. During the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 2023, the work of our community services department was concentrated on closing out the restaurant voucher program, supporting all city events, initiating the Keep the Park Beautiful affiliation, connecting and collaborating with community stakeholders. As far as housing, we ramped our community outreach. We kept building the community tracker that we already have to help us stay connected to residents. As far as public health, Francis Rath was appointed to the Prince William Community Services Board. Also, he has been supporting community events and collaborating with community partners. I will present the public health piece because Francis Rath is away. He's not here today. So in that area, we continue to look for mental health resources for our fire and police departments, staff. Also, Francis is working on the opioid prevention, abatement, and treatment funding. He is collaborating with Prince William and the City of Manassas to come with a plan for program implementation. There are restrictions on the use of the money, and funding is directly, will be coming directly to our city and also through the state.
And we're going to come back with a presentation with a policy or a program for y'all's recommendation or approval for an actual budget, just like for ARPA. We'll share how much money we're getting for opioid relief and what we can do with it, and then what our recommendations are in terms of partnering with the county CSB and the MAP clinic and other resources as well.
Thank you. Francis Rath is also serving as the Assistant Emergency Manager. He attended a school violence meeting in Arizona in November. He's also talking about, as far as the emergency management area, he's also planning evacuation drills and exercises. And he supported the installation of the AED and Stop the Bleed kits in City Hall. With housing in the first 2 quarters, as far as our housing services, in the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 2023, we continued working on the rent relief program and also closed out that first round. We had 15 applications. 1 of them was approved. A lot of them got assistance from the state program, which had a lot of funding for that. We also provided resources and guidance to residents of Manassas Park, Manassas City, and Prince William, who know about the services that we have, and we get a lot of calls from everyone. We promoted and leveraged all the community services that are already existing, and just also created the resource guide that we're going to show that we have on the website now. Also, we continue to work in community outreach and collaborating with our partners in the community. We had presence in different events with, again, promoting the services and resources that are already in the community. Here you see we have a tracker, as I mentioned before, from all the people that call or that we meet at the events, and we put them on the tracker, and we track the needs that they have, whether or not they live in Manassas Park or Manassas or Prince William. So here you have, just for comparison, you see fiscal year 22, quarter 2, that's when we started the Community Services Department. And you see in blue, that's the total contacts that we had. In red, you have Manassas Park residents. Then in gray, you have the rental needs, in yellow, utility needs. For the 3rd quarter of fiscal year 22, you can see how the total contacts increased. And of course, all the needs increased as well on the chart. For fiscal year 22, quarter 4, you see the big jump there as we collaborated with in events, etc. In fiscal year 23, quarter 1, again, you see how we extended that tracker and so forth. Now, the second tracker here, the second chart, this is just a quarter-over-quarter comparison from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23, and that's for the 2nd quarter. So you can see that total contacts for those quarters were more in fiscal year 22, quarter 2, than in the fiscal year '23. However, you can see an increase in the calls or contacts in Manassas Park, which is great. That means that we're doing more things in Manassas Park and reaching out more our residents. As far as the ongoing programs for housing, I continue to support the emergency management activities. That's just something that I'm interested in getting into as part of the housing area. And also support the implementation of Keep the Park Beautiful initiative. We're still waiting on the processing of the application. And also finishing up an application for a grant to produce a needs assessment study that we need in order to come up with a affordable housing strategy for the city. And those are the grants that we applied for. That's another area that I'm doing, grant writing. So we got the event grants for $5,000 that we're going to use for the community services, for the Community Day event on April 22nd. We're also getting $7,500 from the local emergency performance grant, and that we already used it to purchase portable radios for Parks and Recs. And the $20,000 grant is the one we're going to apply for the needs assessment study. And our goals for fiscal year '23, quarter 3, we're just going to finalize the needs assessment grant. We will continue to work on the keep the park beautiful and start working with the maintenance group. Continue applying for grants. Actually, we just started a second round of rent relief program, so we're gonna work on that program. We got 16 applications already. 2 have been approved. Thank you. Actually, one goal that we have for this quarter is to have a successful Community Day event. We already have 30 agencies that have confirmed, and possibly 40, including about 5 businesses
Ooh, that's good.
that will sponsor the event.
That's very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. What exactly is Active Violence Conference on slide 3?
I'm sorry. Laszlo, were you?
On slide 3.
That's the Alice training. That's the active shooter school.
I
Oh,
wasn't sure if it was Alice or if it was like domestic violence or
I see.
what form of violence it was. Can you-
No,
Yeah,
it
it's the
was
school violence.
Alice and a school center rep, along with Francis and a member of the police department. All 3 of them went. And I want to say someone from fire as well went as well.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I got 2 questions. The first one is for the city manager. You mentioned the part-time individual that's helping with development, and also there will be a part of event planning within her position. So does that mean for fiscal 24, when will we see a schedule of proposed events?
Yeah, the Parks and Rec is actually working on that. So this person was supposed to focus on downtown events, but Parks and Rec is proposing a portfolio, but I'm waiting for them to brief me until this person starts. So that Friday, they'll brief me on their proposal with this person here who can review, who helped build up all the Manassas events as well, and then we'll retool that and eventually come back with the recommended strategy for downtown events and overall city events as well.
Probably maybe sometime in the summer? Early
Yeah,
summer?
that's my goal. Yep.
Okay. And then the second one is for you. The affordable housing strategy, is that a state mandate, or are we just being very proactive with affordable housing?
I would.
It's not a state mandate, I
Yeah,
can tell you
no,
that. It's something that we want to be proactive as this region continues to see skyrocketing home values that are pricing working class families out of the community. We want to get ahead of that and see what options we have. Other jurisdictions have already adopted the top 3 items, since these have been kind of your key priorities as well. So the highlighted ones are going to be, since those are the prioritized items, that's what I'm going to try to target in the budget, is to satisfy those requirements. And of course, this one being the toughest in terms of balancing everything that we're looking to do. But just got some assessment information this morning, and it's still looking strong for this year. So I'll share with you guys in a couple of weeks the actual numbers. So the goal will be to at least be able to cover our inflation, and then try to do as much as we can for tax rate reductions after that as well. So I'll be presenting that in April 4th for the budget meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So any questions on the priorities list? How this
It's
ended
a
up?
very grounded, everyone was very grounded when they made their selections, so I think this is terrific. Comments or questions? Yes, sir.
The community maintenance, the staffing parking enforcement, it's been staffed, right?
For code enforcement?
No, the parking enforcement.
Yeah, there's one person now, and it has been staffed. Yes, that's correct.
So, I mean, I know it's everybody's priority number 2. I mean, if we keep it as a priority, what does that mean? Just having a
Well,
budget?
you're gonna see. I'm gonna show you guys that we're scheduled to lose about $200,000 in revenues, and also a decrease in like about 800 tickets issued when we lost our employee, our parking enforcement officer. The plan always was, when the downtown came about, we were going to have a parking enforcement division with the second person. So adding the second person, again, would just ensure that we're going to get, and that will be actually cost neutral.
Yeah.
Because you're going to generate the parking tickets that cover that position anyways. So that accomplishes your enforcement goals, especially now we're going to have the commercial signs up there. We can't have one person enforcing that, because they're working the Monday through Friday shift. You want to have an evening and weekend person as well to cover all the parking enforcement requirements. So at least that's what so what I'm doing is, you guys are kind of giving me what you guys want to accomplish. I'm going to come back with the budget proposals to kind of implement what your goals are.
So right now, I mean, I guess when you present your proposal, that line item is staff for 2, 3?
Right now, it's only staffed for 1, so always the long-term vision was to have 2, one person focused evenings, weekends, the other person kind of the standard Monday through Friday, or kind of staggered shifts as well, so we can kind of get full scope coverage. And more importantly, if one person leaves, we're not going a 6-month period with decreased parking enforcement, because our police are already tasked out. They were at 25% short of staff for the majority of this fiscal year. We're down to, I think, like 15% still. They're responding to calls. There's demands for traffic enforcement that we can't. So we already have too much happening for our officers, that we really need the parking. If we want to do parking enforcement, we need that capability.
And to piggyback on that, I've heard it from a few residents, now that they've seen the mini mobile out and about, they're overjoyed.
Yes.
I mean, they're extremely overjoyed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my husband was so happy that he got out of the car and said hello to the lady.
Yeah, Isabel.
Sorry, you weren't speaking into your
I'm sorry.
microphone.
My husband was so happy, he got out of the car and said hello to the lady.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this?
Questions?
No, straightforward.
Looks good. No, it looks great, Laszlo, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, one more question. The cigarette tax, if increased to 95 cents, we have the capability to increase the cigarette tax, one?
We do. I'd have to look into kind of what
All cities have the authority to increase cigarette tax.
yeah, no, but I don't know what percentage per year.
You can go as high as you want. Just no
As
cap.
you want, okay, because Commissioner mentioned something to me today that I need to look into about the caps, but if you already know, then I'll.
So if we decide to increase it, that's extra revenue coming in basically to the city.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, but
People
you
go
also have to
someplace
look,
and buy it.
I think you have to do a little bit of analysis. Just because you raise it, does that decrease the demand? Do folks then go across the way to go to Prince
what
William
you're
County where they
saying,
get
yeah.
it cheaper?
That's right.
We increased it under me, 2017, Ms. Mayor, you remember, and that was the argument, and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce sent me a letter saying that it was attacking Hispanics, and I'm Hispanic, and the Chamber of Commerce president was not Hispanic, so I don't know what he's talking about. And we actually got an increase of about $30,000 a year, that year. And also, it's not really about money, it's about health. We have awareness, we have to promote public health, and that's something that has no benefit in society or civilization. It kills people, kills 170,000 people a year. And it should always not be a concern about a dollar figure. It should be about public health as well. But I think it did in the past when we increased. It went up about, I think it was 25,000 when we increased it in 2017. So,
But I'm going to politely disagree with you about health, because if that's the case, then we should go after fried food, we should go after alcohol.
Not
In many-
fried food.
I know.
we could if
I
you
know, I
want,
love
if
my
you're
fried
suggesting
chicken.
that.
But at the end of the day, you know, to increase the rate and where people can go across the way is kind of a form of, it's no different than what we did with alcohol back in the 1920s, what prohibition. So,
Prohibition is illegal. We're not saying it's illegal. We're saying that we're going to increase the rate on it on taxation. Prohibition said that you got rid of it and you can't have it at all.
Well,
We're not saying
also,
that.
a lot of big businesses are doing away with cigarettes. CVS won't even sell it,
Yeah.
right? And they're not, like Kerr is saying, is not about a dollar sign, it's about public health, right?
Thank you.
So, I mean, if these were, I mean, I don't know about 2018, if it actually did provide more revenue, but
Did.
if it did, then, I mean, that might be something to consider. I wouldn't mind considering that.
I can provide you guys maybe the neighboring tax rates.
Yes.
Because every time,
Yeah, that'd be-
to your
yeah,
point,
that'd be
anytime
good.
you increase
Yes.
prices, there's
I like that.
elasticity,
Thank
but,
you.
yeah.
Could you provide the yearly income from that too, the revenue income?
Our income or,
Manassas Parks?
oh,
income?
over the last few years? Yes.
And with the
Last year.
increase that we did in
Yeah,
2017.
yeah, I can do
Yeah, that'd
that.
be helpful.
I'll say overall, it's been steadily declining as people shift from cigarettes to vape.
To vape, yeah. that's
So
what
just
I'm-
know that, that's the bigger target is, or the bigger, a big concern for
And you
health.
can't tax that on like the 0.8 or something ml or whatever it's in it. There, it's, I looked it up.
Oh, so you can't tax the.
You
big-
can. It's like, I don't know, I'm not a chemist.
Yeah, I can ask the Northern Virginia Cigarette Tax Board about what, because I know that was something the state was pushing hard for, was to be able to tax vape as a growing issue.
that was going to be my recommendation.
Yeah.
And if we really do want to consider this, maybe actually have a representative from the tax board come in and talk to us.
You're the tax board representative though, aren't you? For the
I'm
city?
actually
Well, no,
talking-
that's a board, I'm a board, or, yes, board member to the actual
Right.
tax, but they have a staff
Right.
as well. Yeah. Okay, all right, I'll get you guys the, and I'll look into the
Thank
vape,
you.
and also if there's a percentage cap on increase.
Any other comments or questions for Laszlo? Okay, no, this looks good, thank you. Okay, we have no closed meeting. Is there anything else for the good of the city?
I would like to piggyback on what Ms. Mensing said and Mr. Moore, that at the next meeting, we discuss possibly the spending allowance, at least have a conversation about it. The next meeting, are you in favor of that?
Yes.
Yeah,
so-
conversation, absolutely.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Nice.
All right, let's see there.